So I've been watching the Traitors this series, and I think the Traitors accidentally shows us something usually missed but hugely important about why inequality and the problems in our society don't get fixed. So if you watch the series carefully, something becomes really obvious. The traitors, the people with the biggest advantage in the game, are the hardest to see. They're not loud, they're not theatrical, and they don't dominate the room. In fact, they barely speak. And I realise that's not accidental, because when you have information asymmetry, power asymmetry, you don't need to argue your case. You don't need to persuade. You don't even need to lie. And in our society, I didn't see that at first, because I kept thinking that the problems was bad faith or ideology or corruption, right? And those things are there. But watching the series, I think the bigger problem is simpler than that, because the problem for people at the sharp end of that unequal power or information dynamic, they're desperate for signal, right? There has to be a way to fix this. There has to be a way to root out the problem. So they have to create signal themselves. And notice who gets targeted first, right? Not the quiet ones, not the people sitting back. The ones who get attacked first are the ones who stick their head up, the ones who sound certain, the ones who propose a direction. And that's how opposition fragments. And the important thing about that, no one has to orchestrate that fragmentation. The system does it on its own. In an information-poor environment, clarity looks suspicious and silence looks neutral. Sometimes one of the traitors even notices this. They clock that the safest move isn't intervention. It's letting everyone else burn energy on the wrong targets.
People are on edge and there's some scattergun approach being taken. There was suspicion on Ross, and I remembered what Sun Tzu says in The Art of War. When your enemies are making a mistake, don't interrupt them. This is working. It's going very well.
It's letting everyone else burn energy on the wrong targets, right? And this exact pattern, silence and fragmentation, I swear it's why we can't tax the ultra wealthy, because it's actually not about redistribution being impossible, and it's not about the numbers not stacking up, because those are actually quite clear. But it's because the debate is designed to never properly begin, right? Like, watch what happens the moment somebody says, maybe extreme wealth should be redistributed. The conversation, it doesn't move forward. It collapses inward.
Even left-wing economists say it doesn't work, but it'll make everyone poorer, okay? Because of behavioural change, people leaving, loss of incentive, the cost of implementing it, it'll make people poorer. Even left-wing economists say that.
Well, what about the unintended consequences? What if it scares investors? And what if the rich just leave? And notice something important about that. None of those questions challenge power. They challenge each other. Because when people without power argue amongst themselves, people with power, they don't need to defend their position.
When your enemies are making a mistake, don't interrupt them.
They can just sit back silently and wait and let the faithful fight among themselves. And this is where Traitors stops being a television show, right, and becomes an economic model. But the Traitors also show something else. It shows what actually threatens power. Because when enough people see and say the same thing at the same time, when they agree on a direction, silence stops working as a strategy. And information asymmetry, it doesn't disappear overnight, but its advantage collapses the moment that people act together, because silence only works when people are divided. And that's why we need some kind of wealth tax as soon as possible. Just some kind, not perfect design, not endless debate, just direction. Because while we debate, billionaires are buying up housing, media companies and political influence. While we argue about how it would work, they're using that wealth to make sure we keep arguing forever. Movement matters more than perfection. And I'm going to put up a video about that next week. Because inequality does real damage to our societies. Like the IMF, like not exactly a socialist organization, right? The IMF now admit that extreme wealth inequality destabilizes economies. And that matters. Matters even more than the money itself, because the more that extreme wealth is taxed, the more its silent power fades, its influence over media, over lobbying, over political access. Because actually, you don't need confrontation to challenge the status quo, you just need agreement. So don't let the traitors keep winning. And yes, when I say traitors here, I'm talking about billionaires. People, or traitors to mankind. People who take 99% of the resources and call it earned success. Like, honestly, though I'd love to see a version of the Traitors where one contestant keeps 99% of the food and water. I really wonder how long that would last. I mean, just for the complaints. Though I know one thing for certain, the faithful wouldn't debate those rules. They'd change them in real time. So let's change them. The one way is a wealth tax. But I know one thing for certain. In that situation, the faithful, they wouldn't debate the rules. They'd change them pretty fucking fast. So let's change them pretty fucking fast. The one way is a wealth tax.